This is Jesse Stoddard, and today we're going to talk about how to scale your business and dominate your marketplace, the ultimate methodology for small business growth. I want to congratulate you for being on this today. The reason I am is because of this quote from Henry Ford: thinking is the hardest thing a man can do. Probably the reason so few of them do it. And you are challenging yourself by thinking. That's what you're going to do here today, just a little bit. And I think by the end, you're going to be really excited about what you learn. The problem with most small business owners is that the vast majority are good at what they do, but never get out of the solopreneur mindset. There's 16 million in America who are doing it as a side job, and their business, that is, and 6 million are truly self-employed, but only about 1.7 million are a new employer with a partner or assistant. So the vast majority are doing this almost as a glorified hobby, or basically they own a job. Starting a business, running a business, and scaling a business all require different mindsets, different strategies, and different techniques. And for most people, this creates massive doses of stress, but it doesn't have to. Decide what you want. What business are you really in? What business do you want to be in? What do you want personally out of it? Are you trying to grow a large business because it excites you? Do you want to build it up, literally, or brand recognition, etc., just to sell it? Do you secretly want to just escape? One reason so few of us achieve what we truly want is that we never direct our focus. We never concentrate our power. Most people dabble their way through life, never deciding to master anything in particular. Tony Robbins. I agree with that quote. It's really useful. Recently, I attended a GKIC event, and the founder of Infusionsoft had a slide in his presentation, did a training on the stages of small business. I was fortunate enough to get that slide and use it here, so credit where credit is due. This is about what really is a small business. And if you ask 10 different people, you'll get 10 different answers. And here's their breakdown of the stages of small business and the biggest hurdle in each stage. We're going to go over them one at a time because I think this is going to make a huge difference for you. First of all, let's look at the initial stages here, the solopreneur, which is the side job or the self-employed. And the whole focus there is usually to quit the day job. This is where most people start. Usually it's just one person. They're making anywhere from 0 to 100K, and usually the side job is the 0 to 4,000 a month, and maybe the self-employed would be 4 to 10. The number in the U.S. is 16 million for the side job, 6 million for self-employed. The team, usually there's an owner. They get a little bit more. Maybe they've got contractors. But their biggest hurdle is time and leads. And so if you're in that phase, you know exactly what I'm talking about. And leads, of course, is solved with marketing, which most of them have not mastered at that point. Now, if you're one stage ahead of this, you're looking at being a new employer, or you are a new employer. Usually the sales there is the $100,000 to $300,000 annual level. And the big challenge is sales, creating a structured sales environment, having trained sales professionals, and really duplicating yourself. If you're the one that does all the sales, that can be the biggest challenge, is finding someone else that will help you with sales. And then the steady operation level, the 300 to 1 million, the challenge is really in marketing and the service. So really running, they call it, with the business. And there's usually 2 to 10 involved, and people in the 100,000 to 1 million point. And there's a little gray area in there, but really we've got, going from maybe a partner or assistant to actually having a team. And that's where a lot of the people I'm working with are, is right in this new employer and steady operation levels. Now, the biggest hurdle for most people is just getting from solopreneur, number 1, to number 2, or number 3. That's a huge hurdle for most people, and most people never do it. But you will notice that in the U.S. there's 1.7 million new employers, which is not huge, but it is doable. It is doable. And if we focus now on the slightly higher level, the 7-figure business and the growth company, on the 7-figure business, we're looking at about $1 to $3 million mark, and the challenge there is people and systems, duplication, finding people, creating systems to automate what you do, and so that you're not responsible for every little decision in every moment. And that's how you start to create leverage. But in a growth company, true leverage is not really achieved until you reach the leadership and culture level where you actually are creating a culture around the scalability of a growth company. Andrew Carnegie said, "No person will make a great business who wants to do it all himself or get all the credit." And that is an example of it. So finally, when you look at the big picture, you see the stages from 1 to 5, and you probably are going to find yourself somewhere in there. And I encourage you to identify what level you're at and what the challenges are, and seeing what you need to do in order to scale. Another thing to remember is it's not how much money you make, it's how much money you keep. And so we're going to talk about how do you scale? How do you become a growth company? How do you get higher up on that chart? Well, first of all, we have to cover a couple new concepts about gross profit. There's different ways to affect gross profit, and typically a solopreneur or somebody who's running with their company, trying to grow it, but they're still in those earlier phases. Even after achieving more of a larger size, 5, 10, 15 million, typically the entire focus is on decreasing cost of goods sold. So in other words, if we say, how do you increase your profit? Well, you say, well, here's how much I'm making in revenue. Here's how much I'm spending to get that. How can we save money to increase the bottom line? That's typically the entire focus. But the other side of it is you could, of course, increase revenue. So if you increase revenue and you keep cost of goods the same, COGS, then you essentially are going to increase your gross profit. Pretty simple calculation, right? Let's look a little closer at that, though. When you decrease COGS, pretty much that's it. Most companies have already done everything they can in that area, or they're striving to do so, and essentially additional gains in decreasing COGS are incremental at best. Typically, you save a little bit here and there, but it won't substantially impact the bottom line after your initial effort. So if you make an effort to decrease cost of goods sold, pretty much you've made your savings, and then it's difficult to continue doing that. But over on the increasing revenue side, that's where things can really get exciting. And most business owners, especially small business owners, aren't used to looking at all of the potential there. Well, the first thing you can do is you can increase new customers. That's obvious. That's what most people are focused on. Typically, that's going to be where all your energy goes. And that is a good place to go. And typically, if you get more customers, then you're going to increase your profit without having to deal with COGS anymore. But let's look a little closer at increasing new customers. There's several different ways you can do that. First of all, you can increase new customers through advertising and sales. Now, that might be where your company or your company are trying to focus some attention. Typically, the advertising side of it is just scattershot. It's the shotgun method. They're trying anything and everything, and it's not very scientific. And sales is also not very duplicatable or duplicable, as the dictionary would contest that word usage there. And typically, the focus there is to try to just ram more leads into the system to create more sales, which is not a bad thing to do. But basically, just increasing your advertising spend or increasing your sales, simply focusing on spending more money on it is one way, or just creating more volume is one way to do it. But you can also increase new customers through referrals. So many different companies don't focus on referrals. They're reactive to referrals. In other words, if a referral comes in, they say, oh, great, that's nice. Let's try to get more of those. Or they're a little bit active, which is they're trying to remind their customers occasionally to give them referrals, or they occasionally ask. And then there's being proactive and orchestrating referrals, which is creating entire systems around generating referrals and campaigns around referrals and follow-up, automated and manual follow-up systems for referrals and contests, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So there's a lot of things you can do in that area, but we're not done yet. The other thing we can do in terms of increasing revenue is increasing customer lifetime value. It's a little bit different concept. In other words, the lifetime value of a customer, how many times a customer will buy, how much they will buy, is a huge area of potential growth in a business. In fact, I would suggest that before you even bother doing anything else, the first thing to do is look for the low-hanging fruit in increasing your customer lifetime value. There's several different ways we can do that. First of all, we could increase revenue per transaction. So every time a transaction happens, there is an opportunity there to look at the sales process, look at the offer, look at the product or service that you are offering in that moment, and increase that revenue at that one time. That could be done through upsells, cross sells, downsells. That could be done through back-end offers. The other way you can increase customer lifetime value is by increasing the number of transactions. The more you offer, having a catalog, having a process of follow-up, uh, customizing your sales offers by the behavior of the customer. If you know a customer tends to buy a certain thing, offering more of that or something similar or something that is that works along with that thing that you're offering, that's complementary to it. There's many ways of increasing the number of transactions. In addition to increasing revenue per transaction, we can look a little closer at that. We could also increase prices. So you've got the revenue per transaction can be affected by the price. If you increase the price, all just that one thing alone can often make an incredible difference in your ROI, in net profit for your business. And a lot of business owners are afraid of increasing prices, but when they give it a try and they target better their ideal client, they find that the client has less price sensitivity because they're ideal, and they tend to be able to make a lot more money compared to the number of customers they might potentially lose if they've differentiated themselves properly in the marketplace. Another thing that can be done to affect increased revenue per transaction is to increase the quantity of goods and services sold. So in other words, you can you can give a quantity discount. You can find ways to do add-on sales. You can, again, going to the back end and creating upsells and downsells and cross-sells. So there's a lot of different ways to increase quantity of goods and services sold. So now getting back to increasing the number of transactions, how would you do that? Well, you can increase purchase frequency. The number of times you could work on increasing the number of times someone purchases. If the average sale happens once every 6 months, look for ways to make it happen once every 5 months or 4 months. Or maybe there's a smaller item that could be sold every 2 months, for example. So the purchase frequency, how often someone wants to come back, can be also changed by the amount of the product or service you sell, and at what price point sometimes can affect the number of times someone purchases. And then also just increasing customer lifetime in general. So if you're a one-hit wonder, you sell somebody a roof and then they never come back to you again, that's not a great customer lifetime value. It was a great one-time purchase, but what else could be done to increase that customer lifetime? Oftentimes it's as simple as follow-up. It could be as simple as one technique. There are many, but I've seen people do things like print newsletter, not email, but print, something that's tangible, that people tend to have a higher perceived value, and they don't forget about you, and then the next time they're thinking they need something, they come back to you. So increasing customer lifetime value is another way to increase the number of transactions overall. So when we look at ways to affect gross profit, again, we could camp out on decreasing COGS, and that's it. There's not much else you can talk about there. That's one element. Or you can focus on increasing revenue, which has many different elements. Increasing new customers with advertising and sales and referrals, increasing customer lifetime value with revenue per transaction, increasing prices, increasing quantity of goods and services sold, increasing the number of transactions, increasing the purchase frequency, increasing customer lifetime. So look at that. Look at the number of ways that increasing revenue can impact the bottom line. And that is what I want to encourage you to do in order to create a company that has the momentum, that has the money, the cash flow necessary to fund growth and to fund team building and to fund your dream. The real gold in them thar hills is on the increasing revenue side, that's why if we want to focus on increasing revenue, you'll need a comprehensive sales and marketing strategy. And by the way, marketing provides leverage through creating advertising assets. And there's different tiers that you will need to achieve in order to build a growth company that is sustainable and doesn't require you to do everything yourself. So in other words, marketing is the answer. Because the purpose of business is to create a customer, the business enterprise has only two basic functions: marketing and innovation. Marketing and innovation produce results, all the rest are costs. That's a quote from Peter Drucker. He has another one that he was even more bold on, which is the aim of marketing is to make selling superfluous. Peter Drucker, the father of management, he is the granddaddy of management. So I guess if he says it, it must be true. So let's talk about the tiers now. So first tier, in order to develop this revenue model, revenue focus model, increasing revenue, is tier one marketing. That's your foundational marketing. That's the essentials. And then there's a tier two, which is innovation. That's where you become more competitive in your marketplace. And then tier three, I call it domination, where you completely dominate your marketplace. We're going to go each one in turn. Tier number one, marketing, is foundational or essentials. Some examples of things that are on the first tier are just a plan, a marketing plan. Most companies, most owners don't have it, even though they, maybe pay lip service from time to time. They don't actually have one, and a budget. And most refuse or never even update the budget if they even have one. So the primary target market focus, which would be a part of that plan, is another foundational element. You need to know who you're going after, and you want to simultaneously attract the right customer and repel the wrong ones. And then also, of course, the name, rank, serial number, traditional marketing. What I mean by that is whenever you think of a business card, it's usually a boring thing. It's name, rank, serial number. If you're in retail or if you have a storefront, you need signage. You're going to need the logo. You're going to need the basic stuff that you're used to having, the brochure, just to make sure that you look professional. That's not usually going to get you a lot of new customers by itself, but it's what people expect. And so it's usually just there because otherwise you don't look like you're legitimate. That's about the only real reason for it nowadays, though, because truth is that building out your foundation really obviously nowadays requires a website, Google Business, and other listings online, citations, review sites, that type of thing, and basic social management. So you need to have a presence. That is the digital storefront. Still, though, we're looking at that name, rank, serial number approach. It's the basics that everybody has. It's not necessarily going to make you stand out, even if your website's great. Although you have to have that stuff, and you have to be there so that you can be found on Google. And then we need to have a basic sales funnel and basic automation. Your sales funnel may be manual. That's the process of how a lead converts into a customer, how a prospect, lead, customer, that entire process. And you're best off if you have a very basic automation system on your website in order to handle that, in order to handle new emails and calls and follow-up process. That can be done with software as simple as MailChimp or as complicated as like the Infusionsoft's and the HubSpots of the world. But you need something basic there, a basic funnel where somebody hits your website, they opt in for some information, they're sent an email and some follow-up, and someone is calling them. And that follow-up procedure is also documented and automated as much as possible. And then a media mix. Now, this is getting a little bit more advanced, and I have another training on asset allocation as it relates to advertising. But in general, you're going to start testing a media mix. What do I mean by that? I mean not putting all your eggs in one basket, but having a variety of different advertising that is going to produce and generate good prospects and leads for you. That may be a combination of online and offline. It could be heavy in one area when you're first starting out, but I wouldn't rely on just one. Facebook is a great source. Google is a great source. But what else? What other ways work in your industry? Do trade shows work? Do networking meetings work? Do referral relationship building works? What are the basic things that you need? Are you going to run a coupon, a direct mail piece, the Val packs and the postcard offers, that kind of thing? You need to begin testing those and find out what a good mix is to get your business off the ground. And then the ROI calculator with analytics. Basically, you need to be tracking all of your advertising and marketing spend and find out what works and how well it works by really knowing your numbers. We call that the ROI calculator, which is something that we do routinely now for businesses. And then other necessary evils, like when you got to do recruiting job ads and Craigslist and Indeed.com and all that type of thing. Those are other things that are foundational, just because typically, especially if you're a service-based business, one of the biggest problems you have is not just the leads, but also attracting, hiring, training, and retaining good people. So you have to begin that process. And all of this is just foundational essentials, basics. It surprises me how many businesses businesses don't even have all these things in place, and they're already off onto some other level trying to look for, the next magic bullet or the next tricky thing that's going to help them skip a step and become a millionaire without doing any work and without having a good product or a service. So that's not what, if that's what you're looking for, you're not going to like my information or my presentation. So because there really is no shortcuts. Laying the foundation to a good business always requires the essentials, and these are those essentials. Now, tier two is innovation, where you get more competitive. And some things that I recommend at this level, after you laid the foundation, is to create omnipresence, if I can borrow a term from my buddy Frank Kern. Omnipresence is about creating a lot of great content and goodwill into your marketplace and having lead generation systems. In other words, it's where you look like you're everywhere to your ideal target market. Not to everybody. You're not wasting massive amounts of money on advertising to the unclean masses. It's just to the people that you think are ideal target market, and that is with great content that positions you as with credibility and authority and even celebrity over time, so that you look like the go-to person or company when it comes to your product or service to your target market. The other thing that we want to establish is getting all of the low-hanging fruit as possible. There is so much money to be made for a lot of small businesses right under their noses that they're not paying attention to, and you want to make sure that you have turned over every stone. One example is unconverted leads. What do you do? What's your system for unconverted leads? How many times and how many ways do you follow up? What is your exact process? Because remember, you spent money to get that lead, and now they didn't say yes right away. Well, what do? And most studies show that it takes at least 6, 7, 9 follow-ups before someone's even going to say yes to an offer. And many times people take more than at least 90 days just to consider you, and sometimes don't actually buy anything from you for 6 months. So if your entire system is designed to get them to close today, one call close, and but what about, and you close it even 50 or 60%, which would be amazing. What do you do with the other 40 or 50% that did not buy today? Well, most of the time companies have a lot of money that they can make with those lists, and they're not doing it, and instead they're just going and looking for more leads. So in other words, you have holes in your bucket. Okay. There's some techniques. A quick example, just to give you one, is the throw under the bus technique, which is if you have a sales force and somebody wasn't able to close the sale, the manager or you call up the customer and say, hey, I'm really sorry that so-and-so John wasn't able to help you as well as we thought. He must have done something wrong. He was having an off day. I think he was under the weather. But the good news is we've got Sally over here, and she's our number one sales representative or customer service representative, and she's able to I think she's going to be able to help you a lot better, and she knows all the cutting edge information and has a special offer for you. And that's the he basically throw John under the bus and give it to Sally, all of John's unconverted leads, and then you do the same with Sally, all of her unconverted leads, you throw her under the bus and give them to John. Little techniques like that they sound clever, but they really do work. And outbound calls. Okay, so oftentimes we're so inbound focused, we've got the leads and we're calling them, and then we're just looking for more leads, but we don't actually get aggressive with outbound calling. And I'm not just talking about call centers and cold calling. I'm talking about calling those people multiple times later on in the process for follow-up. And then swapping leads and selling leads to other companies. If you have leads that you can't close, and you possibly could make an affiliate offer, or you could sell those leads or swap those leads with another company that does something similar, but not directly competitive, or even directly competitive sometimes. If you have a lead that a list of leads that you were not able to close, and you're providing a house cleaning service, maybe you then try to swap them with the carpet cleaning business, and vice versa. I don't know if that was a great example, but that's just what first thing that came to my head. Or there may be companies that you would purchase your leads. If you're a lead generator and you're growing your business, which you're going to be doing a lot of marketing, then you want to get the best return on investment you can, because you have customer acquisition costs. You have CAC, customer acquisition costs. So we want to increase customer lifetime value to increase our ROI, but we also want to maximize the ad spend, maximize what we get out of that lead. And so all of this is low-hanging fruit stuff that most companies, most small businesses are not looking at. And then also back-end offers. I mentioned it before, but you've got upsells where they buy something and immediately, whether it's online in the cart or whether it's offline, and it's just it's an ask from a salesperson. But what else would they buy at that time of transaction? If they say no to the offer, what maybe lower ticket item could you sell before on their way out, or what other things that are related and complementary, but may not be normally thought of as an upsell, but the person may be interested. So these are all things to think about before you go and just try to expand everywhere in the marketplace. There's probably a lot of holes in your bucket to fill. And then referral partnerships, strategic alliances, and affiliates. Same concept, I mentioned it before, but basically you want to find these people, target them, and treat them like a friend, a valued partner for ongoing long-term business relationships. And you have to actually create marketing funnels, marketing campaigns around your referral partnerships and strategic alliances instead of just reacting to them. You want to orchestrate that. So then there's tier 3. And tier 3 is about domination. And so getting there requires, first of all, multiple target market expansion. So when I mentioned target market, I meant was finding your ideal customer. Usually in a business, there's more than one. You may have, for example, working with a crawl space cleaning and pest control company, and their primary target market is homeowner, but then their secondary market is real estate agents. Now, they're two totally different markets. One of them is B2C, a business consumer approach, and the other market is a B2B, in other words, a referral relationship. But sometimes those strategic alliances are also customers. For example, the real estate agent who owns a home also might actually be a customer simultaneously with referring customers. And so therefore they are a different target market, which requires different ad copy, different marketing, different advertising, and a different follow-up approach. And so once you develop and get really good at one, then you can add another one. You should pick one at a time so that you don't get overwhelmed, but you can pick one at a time, master it, and move on to the next one. And so really that's how you dominate, is by having multiple target markets going on simultaneously. And that requires sophisticated multimedia, multi-channel, multi-step campaigns. So different kinds of media, online and off, different channels, different methods of doing it, and making sure that they integrate. So when you send a direct mail piece, it integrates with your website. You send them to a landing page to download something and receive something in the mail, and then go back offline again. So you can do online, offline, and vice versa. So there's multi-steps. There's follow-up procedures in there. Research and development is another thing I call basically testing. So anything where you're looking at new channels, you're looking at new media, you have to continually be looking for new opportunities, or out of the normal type of marketing that you want to test first. Maybe it's out of category advertising. You're putting your advertisement in a place that normally people wouldn't see it because you're the only one there, rather than competing with everybody else in a small pond for the same fish. Second and third, business opportunities. Oftentimes, you're a business and you come across an opportunity as you grow and realize it's even better than what you originally started with. Now, I'm not talking about the shiny object syndrome and changing focus entirely, but you have to be open. Sometimes you will find something that's an add-on to your business, or that is instead of your business, that ends up being more profitable than your initial idea, and that's very common as a business grows. Organized project management system is huge, especially and I'm talking specifically about marketing, not everything else in your business, of course, but marketing itself needs to have project management. There's going to be all of these campaigns for the different target markets, and they're going to be very sophisticated with multimedia, multi-channel, multi-steps. So you have to have a project management system that will work with that. By the way, Teamwork is great software, but software also doesn't replace human being interaction with leadership and team training. So you're definitely going to have people that work well together. You're going to have a leader. If that leader is you, great, or you're going to have to find somebody to help you with that leadership process. So, just a quick review, we've got the tier one marketing, that was your foundation, essentials. You've got your tier two marketing, innovation, that's where you get more competitive. And then you've got your tier three, which is where you dominate your marketplace. Now, the last thing we're going to talk about is building your marketing team. So, we're going to talk about the proper and effective delegation at acceptable costs. Because let's face it, if you grew this business and you want to sell it someday, or you wanted to live a life of freedom and luxury, you can't do everything all the time forever. At one point, you're going to have to retire or die trying, right? So let's talk about the growth company example of delegation, team building, and leadership. Well, first of all, there's going to be a CEO, president, or whatever you want to call you, all right? Typically what happens in a growth company is they build a frontline management team. They've got their CFO or accountant, they've got a COO, CIO, whatever you want to call them, or a general manager, somebody that's handling operations or in charge of operations. And then usually you've got someone on the marketing and sales side. Okay, and this could be a chief marketing officer or the VP of sales or someone who's in charge of top line revenue growth. So that's basically your core team in most companies, or it looks something like that. And you've got someone who's in charge of financials, someone that's getting the actual jobs done, production, and then people in charge of bringing in new business. Now, this could look at the relationship between the chief marketing officer and the VP of sales or the sales manager can look in different ways. It could be a chief marketing, officer is in charge of the VP of sales. It's often, if you've got a really good strategist as a CMO, their job is really is sales and marketing. Their job is the entire top line revenue generation of the company. High level CMOs make on average in the US $125,000 a year is I think the last number I saw, and that's average. A lot of them make a lot more than that. Smaller companies usually can't afford them at all. And then the VP of sales is usually highly paid, of course, because they're based on incentive as well. So this is a lot of money, and these are your hired guns that are really bringing in the revenue. It also might be the flip side. It might be the VP of sales is in charge of the chief marketing officer, or oftentimes it's they're lateral to one another, and they're under nobody, they're under you, or maybe whatever your org structure is. But those two are typically related, working together in some capacity. Now let's look more like a realistic startup and small company example. Typically, you've got the CEO, president, and you, and you're kind of doing everything. And the first thing you find is a CFO, a bookkeeper, an office manager, or someone who's playing that role. And so that bond is usually pretty quick because you need to pay your taxes and you need to do a lot of paperwork and L&I and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And that's kind of your HR and everything. And then you get another salesperson so that you can leverage yourself and make some more sales. And that person usually is working directly with you, even though you want them to work under a sales manager at some point. You end up with a GM or a field manager, or a VP of operations or something like that, and now that person's in charge of getting all the work done, and they end up with a very vocal productions person who's tied with them, but also continually talking to you, and so it's kind of confusing who's boss sometimes, where you're in the mix all the time. You get another salesperson in there who ends up for some reason working closely with VP of operations and with you. There's a little bit of confusion there, and then you get another salesperson who reports to the initial salesperson who's not really the boss but kind of mentoring him, and then you get another salesperson who decides to circumvent all of it and just go directly to you again, so you're connected there. And then also there's some confusion because they end up yapping to the bookkeeper, office manager all the time about their problems, who ends up getting involved with that. And there's a little bit of confusion there in terms of who's in charge. And then you get another salesperson, and because you're trying to expand rapidly, and that's the way you do it, and they circumvent all the whole system and just go directly to you. And then finally, you get a personal assistant or a receptionist slash marketing assistant to help you with marketing. So this is typically what the average small business or startup looks like. No rhyme or reason, a spider web of complexity, and you are at the center of all of it. You're the bottleneck of it all. You're trying to delegate, but most of the time you end up doing everything anyway. Does this feel like you? If so, don't worry. I've got a better set of options for you. And by the way, let me go back one really quickly here. When you look at this here, this structure, that final piece that you added typically was somebody, this personal assistant, reception, marketing assistant, typically that was what I call barista Betty, or basically barista Betty, or the, the local coffee shop kid that you hired as an assistant to do a variety of different things. Maybe they were your receptionist, maybe they were kind of a personal assistant, and you're throwing them marketing stuff to do. The problem with this is that person is in charge of the most important thing in your entire business. We already established that. Remember the Peter Drucker quote? So basically you're in charge of two things as the CEO, as the owner. There's two things you should never completely relegate or delegate or abdicate. Okay, your responsibility is the marketing and the checkbook. Okay, you always need to know what's going on with the checkbook, and you always need to go know what's going on with the marketing. And so we already established how important that is and how it really is the lifeblood of the whole business. So why on earth would all of these owners just hire it out to some person that last week was flipping burgers and this week is now your marketing assistant, and or a virtual assistant in some other country that doesn't even understand what's going on in your office? Why would you ever consider doing that? And I think it comes out of this idea of the desire to stay in control, and also not valuing the true benefits of marketing and thinking that the doing of the business is still the most important thing. So if you're an attorney, the handling cases is the most important thing. If you're a plumber, it's fixing the toilets and the pipes. That's the most important thing. But the truth is that the doing of the thing can be hired out a lot easier than the selling of the thing. And that's what marketing and sales is all about. So giving that power to that person with probably zero experience, or maybe they went to school and for it, but who cares, because the book learning is always, as you know, if you're an entrepreneur, book learning has nothing to do with the real world 95% of the time, and all of the real training happens on the job anyway. So book learning is good, but why would we give that responsibility to Barista Betty? Well, because when what you really need to do is find someone who has the experience, and it's either going to be you or it's going to be somebody else that you're going to have to pay handsomely. So there are a better set of options. First of all, we start out with you at the top, and you probably have your sales manager, VP of sales, and you make sure that they are responsible for the salespeople. You might keep your personal assistant or reception, but instead of making them in charge of all your marketing, you keep them as an assistant, which is helpful. And you find a CMO, a real CMO, Chief Marketing Officer, somebody that understands business and marketing, not just knows some marketing tricks, not just digital marketing expert, but somebody that understands offline marketing. That includes print, online marketing, strategy, business plans, and marketing plans, funnels, the big picture of it all, the strategist. And why do you need to find that person? Because that's how you're going to get leverage in order to continue growing your business and not have to do every little thing that happens day to day. And you may not be big enough for that CMO, but this is what typically you're going to have to look for eventually. And you continue to add salespeople with the help of great advertising and marketing to give them leads, and that's how you grow. And then typically you're going to end up with a marketing manager. And the marketing manager is someone who does the day-to-day work of the marketer instead of your personal assistant, and is handling all of that project management work with the CMO oversight as a strategist. And that's how you build a very strong sales and marketing department. Okay. Now this might look a couple different ways. Sometimes you're there and the sales manager with all the salespeople is in their spot, but they are lateral with the CMO. So it may look more like this. There's a lot of different options there. Okay. Now here's a lower cost or smarter solution. There's you. Okay. There's your sales manager with your salespeople, but now you have a personal assistant or reception who's already doing a little bit of marketing, but you outsource to a CMO on the outside of your company, more in a consultant level, which is, by the way, what I do. And what you're getting there is you're getting the advice directly of this consigliere, this right-hand man, so to speak. Sorry for the mafia reference there, but I just kind of think it's apropos sometime for this. It's someone, a trusted advisor, basically. And as you grow your sales team, you also may outsource the marketing manager. Okay, in this case, the outsourced CMO is in charge of the outsourced marketing manager. They are a team outside of the company. Now, why is this better? Because you're paying a fraction of the cost. For a much smaller rate, you can basically have that person give you advice in an independent contractor fashion, and then your personal assistant or reception can help you with a lot of the doing of it, and the marketing manager, through basically project-based work, can get a lot of it done for you as well. So this is what a lot of small businesses haven't ever thought of doing, but it helps them transition into becoming a larger business. Also, another option would be to have your same setup with the sales, but you outsource the CMO and then you hire an in-house marketing manager. Oftentimes, this is somebody, maybe if you had a marketing assistant and they have a lot of experience, and with a little strategy from the outsourced CMO, they could be educated and trained in order to be a real marketing manager, and then they're set up to do that work in that capacity. So this is one of my favorite models, and it's what I'm working on currently with several different businesses, and I'm excited about that. If you want to learn more about one of these options or see what the right fit is for you, then come check out what we have at Stoddard Consulting, where we build the plans with automation funnels, the direct marketing model, sales copywriting, and the ROI calculator. And you can find more information out at jessestoddard.com. Thank you very much. I hope you've gotten some good new ideas out of this, and I look forward to hearing from you soon.